Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Sorry, I have a little pop-up screen there. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Tangia Estrada, co-founder of BIPOC Podcast Creators, and we're so excited to be able to partner with Libsyn and these incredible panelists to talk about monetization and give you all a little sneak peek into the pre-Latino listener report, along with some networking, because we're all about networking at BIPOC Podcast Creators and building connections and meeting people that are going to help you grow and get access and reach your goals. So tonight is about an opportunity to learn about this really important data and what you can do with it and why it matters in this industry. Of course, get you access to these incredible panelists that Elsie is going to introduce to you in just a moment, and talk about some monetization strategies, some things that you should know in order to grow in this space as a creator of a podcast. We are so excited to get started. Please note that we will be keeping an eye on the chat. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We will make sure that we don't skip anybody. But hold your questions until the Q&A section, which will happen after the panel. Everyone will be muted until then, and then we'll start taking questions. And again, we will remind you in the chat to feel free to leave comments and questions there so that we can circle back to them. Without any more delays, I'd like to introduce you all to Elsie Escobar, the one and only Elsie Escobar with Libsyn, an incredible podcast coach and mentor in this space. Take it away, Elsie.
Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for showing up to this event. I think that if you do follow me on social, you know that I've been a huge advocate of the Latino podcast listener report from the inception. And so I am always in awe of the data that comes out and why it's important for us to really talk about that type of data in terms of how it affects us as creators. I've kind of gathered a group of really amazing panelists that all bring a little bit of insight into the space as a whole, within either as a podcaster that you're just focusing in as a podcaster, and or we have business owners, we have entrepreneurs, we have people who are doing the thing, because there's a difference between all of us giving you tactics of how to grow your show and all of that stuff, and actually getting your hands in there and working very hard at being able to do all the things. So I'm going to introduce you really, really quickly to our panelists. Our first panelist is Gabriel Soto, who is a senior director of research at Edison Research, who is, really, without him, we would not have the Latino Podcast Listener Report. He's going to talk a little bit about that here and just what that report is, especially if you've never heard that in the past. We also have the indomitable Zack Peter in the house, who is someone that I've been following online for quite a while now, because I get my my pop culture tea from this guy. And so he does all kinds of incredible stuff, including the fact that he's an author, he's a podcaster, he is a live streamer, he's an entrepreneur, he's a live podcast host, a guest host. He does so many different things. It's amazing the stuff that he's been able to build and the platform that he's been building everywhere, really. He really is everywhere. We have Michelle Khouri, who is, oh my God, somebody that I also have been looking up in this space for such a long time. She is a CEO of Frequency Media. She's also a creator and quite a phenom, doing so many different things. She is, I believe, one of the epitomes of being one of those switchblades. Is that what you call it? Or like those, those Swiss Army knives, not switchblades, Swiss Army knife that does so many different things, so much tools like in her belt where she can create almost anything from nothing. She's a powerhouse. And then we have the amazing Doc Rock, who is really a live streaming expert, but all in all, he does all the things. He is a YouTuber. He's a trainer. He's a speaker. He really is a big thinker. He just is a massive supporter for our community and continues to with his positivity and his brightness and his deep knowledge of all things, not only tech, but also how to really rally people around and educate folks from a real positive place. I'm so excited to have him on board as well. So by the way, he has been around for quite a while. Like, hitting 2 decades now, sir, I believe, in this space, which is really phenomenal. So excited to have all of you here. So let's get started, and let us all come on the stage and do it up and start chatting amongst ourselves and say hey. All right. Okay, so here we are. Here we all are. I'm going to actually send this over to Gabe. Gabe, raise your hand and wave to the folks so that they can see you here and make sure that you're there. There you go. Gabe,
hello, everyone.
Yay. He's going to be giving us a little bit of insight into some of the data that's coming out from the Latino Podcast Listener Report that's going to be released on October 5th, coming up here very soon. And this is the very first time this information has been released. So all of you get ready to take screenshots and share on social, because you are getting the tea right now. Okay? Nobody else has this. Y'all are here getting that tea. So all right, Gabe, go ahead and share the your screen and give us a little bit behind the scenes on what that's like.
Thank you very much, Elsie, for the energetic introduction. I'm happy to be here on this panel today. I will share my screen now and show you guys a preview of the Latino Podcast Listener Report. And let me know if everyone can see my screen.
We can.
Yes. Awesome. All right. So the Latino Podcast Listener Report, for those of you who don't know, this is going into its 4th year. And it has been a tool, a study that has measured how much podcast or how many podcasts Latinos listen to, whether they're listening to it monthly, whether they're listening to it weekly, and how big the market is. And we love this report because it advocates for not just Latino listeners, but also Latino creators. And it shows the role of Latino creators and how important they are to this audience. This year, we're going to focus on monetization, advertisement, and different lifestyles when it comes to purchasing behavior. And this report this year was sponsored by the wonderful company of Libsyn. Elsie is a great ambassador to that group. LWC Studios, Latina to Latina, Latino Media Network, and SXM Media. And like I said, we're going to start off by showing the power that Latinos have when it comes to business, when it comes to purchasing power. And today we know, according to the Latino Donor Collaborative, the GDP report from 2022, that Latinos produce $2.8 trillion of gross domestic product. That's what they did in 2020. For context, Elsie, we know that if Latinos were a standalone country, this GDP would be a lot larger than the United Kingdom. It would make this GDP, the standalone country, the 5th largest GDP in the entire world. So there's a lot of benefits to be had here when it comes to Latino purchasing power. 19% of the population, that's what Latinos account for in the U.S. And they're estimated to be 63.7 million Latinos in the U.S. We're also the future audiences. So Latinos' median age today is 30, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. But when you look at non-Latinos, their median age is 41.1. It means that we still have a lot of growing to do. And as we grow, we can expect that purchasing power to continue to increase as well. Now, how do you harness the power of this money that's going around among the Latino community? Well, you can do it through podcasts, by people here on this panel today, through people attending this conference. We know that Latinos who listen to podcasts earn a higher income, a higher annual household income compared to Latinos overall. A third of Latino weekly podcast listeners make an income over $75K compared to a quarter among just the Latino population overall. One of the ways that you can connect and start to monetize your podcast and connect with this audience is by attending or doing live events. We know that 18% of Latino weekly podcast listeners have ever attended an in-person event from a podcast, and a fifth have donated or given money to a podcast. 22% attended a virtual event. just under a third purchased branded merchandise from a podcast, and 35% signed up for a newsletter. So different ways to interact. And we'll be digging deep into this in the full report. But today, we want to cover donated or given money to a podcast. Here are some reasons why Latino weekly podcast listeners who have donated to a show do it. So from the bottom of the list, to obtain a specific gift, to support a host, to gain access to exclusive content. These are just some of the ways that Latinos, or some of the reasons why Latinos have donated to the podcast. But to me, the biggest takeaway here is that Latinos simply give because they want to support you. They want to support your cause and what you stand for. So keep doing your thing and promote what you stand for, make yourself vulnerable, and talk about why Latinos should give to you, and you can make money that way.
Right on. Thank you so much, Gabe. So I have a question for you, and it really is around the fact of you presenting this data and gathering this data, and a lot of us are wondering why data is important, particularly for why this data? Like, why should people care about the Latino Podcast Listener Report? Why, especially when they're not Latino, especially if they don't, that's not their audience as far as they see it. Why are we on the 4th year of this report?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I get asked that all the time. And I like to say that we are in an age of dataism. Companies, advertisers no longer make decisions, and they leave nothing up to guessing. They make decisions only when they have data available. So no one is going to make a move unless you can prove it and advocate for yourself with numbers like these. And the Latino Podcast Listener Report has helped Latino creators advocate for themselves to sell their podcasts and their inventory to different advertisers. When it comes to answer the second part of your question, Latinos are just the future. We saw the purchasing power. We saw the median age. They're heavily sought after because if you can cater or target and connect with Latinos, big companies, big radio companies are doing this because they know how young the demographic is. They pretty much represent a big portion of Gen Z and Generation Alpha. So if you're connecting to Latinos, it also means you're connecting to future audiences.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gabe. I think one of the reason that I was asking you really is because a lot of the time, especially as we're advocating for ourselves, it's something for us to always keep in mind whenever we're getting our media kits together, whenever we're getting to a place where we have to speak to someone about our work and why you matter, which of course we all know why we matter, but we have to essentially sell the why we matter to so many different people to get the coin. And this kind of information is the kind of information that you can put in your media kits. This is the kind of information that can help you fuel, you get paid. And the more people care about this information, the more we can fund more data, the more information that we can get, the more that we can get funding for what we need. Thank you so much, Gabe. We'll see if we can come back. And if anybody has any questions here towards the end, we'll get a little bit deeper into that. But now I would love to chat a little bit with Zack Peter, because you saw some of the data that Gabe shared. And just as an FYI, folks, this man does all of the things. All of the things. I don't know how you're doing all of the things. So meaning all of the things as in like he's an author. He has memberships and subscriptions running on YouTube. He's got podcast ads because he's working with AdvertiseCast, and he has been doing other things prior to working with AdvertiseCast before that. He's got the YouTube ads happening. He's done doing live events and also weekly co-hosting and for the Ringer TV reporting on reality TV and things like this. Plus, what's with the wine? Like you literally have merch, and then when you have wine, you have wine. I don't know how this happened, but give me a little bit of the scoop as to how all this began.
I mean, how it all began. I started the podcast 8 years ago, but it's kind of just like taken me in so many different directions. I mean, never would I thought, I would be on YouTube and doing live events and have a wine line or ever published a book. Like, to me, it's kind of, it all kind of just happened. I'm somebody that's always led with whatever I've kind of felt really passionate about in the moment. And, specifically with the wine, I just love, I love a good glass of wine. And so I was like, you know what, instead of just doing merch, I'm going to create a wine line, and that's how we're going to do it. So, I'm always somebody that just leads with whatever my passion is, which started with the podcast 8 years ago, back when like nobody knew what podcasting was. Gabe couldn't even pull reports on podcasting because it wasn't really a thing back then. Nobody really understood it. And I was just crazy enough to kind of take a chance on it. I was lucky that there was one teeny tiny little podcast studio that just started, and they were looking to bring in comedians as talent. At the time I was doing stand up, and I was kind of like, a podcast? Like, I don't really know what that is. I don't really want to do that. Like, that sounds like weird. I was like, I'm an on-camera talent. I want cameras on me. I don't want to be on a microphone where they just hear my voice. And I decided to give it a try. And here we are 8 years later, 8 years in a wine line later.
8 years in a wine line. I mean, that's a tagline right there. So how did you develop all of those income streams? Because it's a lot, right? And if somebody said, like, you could do all these things, we get overwhelmed with what were the first steps. So if you were to say, like, number one, which was the first one that you were like, you know what, I'm going to commit to doing this one thing. And the second thing is, which one do you love the most?
The wine, because I can drink and make money off of it at the same time. The first was obviously the podcast. I remember when I first started the podcast, like I said, you didn't have agencies or managers that were out there brokering these deals for you because nobody really understood the landscape at the time. But I'd had a background in nonprofit fundraising. I used to run a foundation with Jenny McCarthy to help kids with autism, inspired by my brother. And through learning about sponsorships and raising money for the nonprofit world, I learned how to put together a deck and how to approach brands. And so that's kind of what I did. The numbers were kind of like, I don't know, my first deal was with a brand called Califia Farms. It's the almond milk. People see the curvy bottle in grocery stores. But so that was the first brand that I had reached out to. And I had to like really sell them on the fact that, it's a podcast. It's kind of like a blog, but it's where you talk, not necessarily write. And so I kind of was good enough using my communication skills to convince them to at least give me something. And I think at the time it was like $400 that they, ended up sponsoring the podcast for, which, wasn't very much. But at the time, like $400 it was crazy that I was even making that. It was $100 a week, and they bought a weekly sponsorship, and I designed it as a drink of the week. I was like, I'll come on the show. Me and my guests will drink a cocktail. The cocktail will be, incorporated with your product. So I've always tried to come up with different, unique, creative ways to make money through the podcast or through any of the other projects that I've taken on. So the podcast was the first one that I started making money off of. And, I just continued to kind of build it out from there. But I looked at it as kind of like the brand overall. The podcast is called No Filter. So I look at like my personal brand and then the No Filter brand. And then I have all the different tiers and buckets that kind of are in line with the brand, but that, can branch off and become revenue streams in and of themselves. So be it the live events, the YouTube ad revenue, the audio ad revenue, the merch line, the wine line, it all connects to the bigger brand of No Filter. And then it also connects to my bigger personal brand.
So, okay, my God, how do you choose? Like, that's a lot. How do you choose? Like, so, because you create 3 shows a week, your shows a week, let alone whatever else that you're doing in terms of like the Ringer and things like that. How do you balance your ability to produce the content and then do the marketing for it and or work on your business and kind of build that out?
Yeah. So I do 3 podcast episodes a week, 2 live streams a week, and then I do 1 to 2 weekly recaps for the Ringer on top of just regular like social stuff. So we're booked and busy. Schedule is constantly moving. And, I love what I do. And so I love that I have the opportunity. I mean, I tell people all the time, I'm like, it's such a silly career to like talk on a microphone about pop culture and reality TV and just kind of like lean into something that I, I'm so passionate about. But, it is kind of silly, but I think it really just goes to show you that if you are passionate about something or you're willing to at least put in the work, you can build a career out of anything. I think right now I probably have about 8 different streams of income. And I like to make sure that we keep that balance, because that balance, you always want to make sure that, I think I learned when I had a full-time job and it ended unexpectedly, I was like, I'm never going to put myself in a position like that again, where I'm going to put all my eggs in one basket. So I'm going to build something that's a little more sustainable, that I can make sure I'm always in control of. And when one's down, I can make sure we put a little more attention over here, or these two streams now can bring in some passive income. So it's always just about making sure, I like to look at it as like the stovetop. You have all the burners on. Some of them are at a simmer, some of them are at a boil, but it's just constantly that juggling act in terms of making sure that the business and the money are constantly coming in. And then personal balance, I feel like, I don't have much of a personal life. I have my family that I dedicate some time to. I'm very family oriented. I have 2 7-month-old puppies now that keep me very busy. So we're up at like 4:30 every day, and we're just moving throughout the day. But luckily for me, I love what I do. So it doesn't feel like work all the time. I enjoy what I do. So to me, it's fun.
Yeah, my God. Thank you so much, Zack, for all that insight. I saw over there that Michelle was saying so real is what she's saying, because she's coming at this from a little bit of a different perspective, because right now I feel that she's kind of doing what you're doing, but she's doing it as a CEO. So Michelle, can you talk with me a little bit about how you diversify the business? Because I've seen you come in to the space and continually iterate and continually realign and continually make different choices. How have you even started to do that? Like, when do you make those decisions as a CEO of a company? Zack is, and you are as well, but in a different context.
Yeah, very different. Huge props to independent creators like you, Zack, and just hearing you talk about those diversified revenue streams, that's everything. That is how you survive. It's super smart. Putting all your eggs in one basket, whether you have a company that's like a corporation, or you are the corporation and you've incorporated yourself, is key. And the way that I've done that with frequency is through launching a whole new side of the business called Recordical. Recordical is made for independent creators, audio creators in particular, but even within, and it's a membership. So it's a tech-driven membership model. Hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Truly the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but one of the most rewarding, because I started as an independent creator as the host of the Cultured podcast, and there is nothing quite as impressive as one person making their dreams come true by making content and platforming, like setting their own platform up and building their own audience for themselves. I'm just so constantly in awe of independent creators. What we do on the frequency media side, the brand side, that is how I've built the company to begin with, which is a branded podcast production company. So that's the corporation. It's a lot more what you think of when you think of a corporation. That's the enterprise side. And so we work with, Jane Goodall on her podcast, and Coca-Cola. We've worked with Apple and Spotify and iHeartMedia, with TurboTax. Those are huge companies that require high quality of work, consistency of work. So really, what we're doing there is constantly pivoting how we work, because you'll see very few companies, podcast production companies, actually working with the largest brands. That's where, there's a lot of podcast production companies out there, but there are very few that work with very large brands.
Yeah.
And that's because you have to speak their language and you have to be able to work in the way that they work. However, the number one thing about diversifying when it comes to the branded side of the business is not just allowing one client to be your only client. The worst mistake you can make is making all of your revenue, or even 50% of your revenue, from one client. You really want to be looking at like 20% here, 20% from there, 20% from there, or even smaller. Because that's where if one client, for whatever reason, look at this economy. This economy is throwing curveballs right and left when it comes to podcast production. Well, many industries, but we're speaking about this right now. And so, when one brand decides to tighten their purse strings, you're not left without anything. So that's how you would diversify it, or how I diversify it on the branded side. And then Recordical it's not as much a diversification play, although it is. It takes a huge investment to start up a company like that or a brand like that. And it's as much of a risk as it is a potential high reward. But that is really my soul's calling, is to help support independent creators. And if it does take off and if it does do really well, then we're looking at a really solidly diversified company where we have both the membership model and also the service-based model.
It really is. I'm assuming that you felt a little fear when you started to create something, like just a little bit.
Every day of my life is ridden with terror.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my God.
I'm just set up for it.
Yeah. Oh my God. So I'm curious about what were the most challenging and the most freeing aspects of making money in podcasting as a business owner that centers podcasting, right? Because there's a difference between you're a business owner that has a podcast and is making money off the podcast, but you are really creating a business around podcasting. So challenging and freeing things about it.
Yeah, I mean, talk about not understanding podcasting even 5 years ago. So I started Frequency 5 years ago, and people were like, when I would tell people, yeah, I'm starting a podcast production company, they were like, yeah, my friend listens to those, I think, like very different climate. Now you're like podcasting and everyone's like, yeah, I host one. I host one, and all of my friends host one, and we all have one, or I'm about to host one. Very, very different. So at the beginning, it was a lot about educating brands on the value and the need and the power of podcasting. The type of collateral we would put together was extensive, and data is and continues to be core. We need these reports to be able to say, this is why this is important. That is so important. I could talk about that all day. So thank you guys. And thank you, Gabriel, for all the work that you do. It's very important. Yeah. So that's what that was. But the freeing part is that, I get to work with audio every day. Like, I'm a huge audio nerd. I was a singer when I was little. I've studied music my whole life. I wanted to work at major label until I worked at a major label. If you know, you know. And so this path with audio has always been a big part of my life. So freeing part is to be able to work creatively using a tool that you feel passionate about. And the challenging part is that every single time you think you've mastered it, phew, the rug gets pulled out from under you, and you have to find a new way, Oh
man. And I think that somebody that can speak to, thank you so much, Michelle, by the way. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for being here. Thanks for doing the hard work. It really, kudos to you.
Thank you for organizing this.
And I have somebody, Doc Rock, who's been around for 2 decades, doing all the work here in podcasting. We are the OG folks who really have been working hard at communicating through podcasting for many, many years. And I think one of the key things that I wanted Doc Rock to talk about here is because he, there's not very few people who have 2 decades of understanding of the trends in the industry, of being able to forecast what you've seen repeat itself now for 2 decades, and also to recognize what are those things that are different now that you're sensing for the very first time that may be like, whoa, this hasn't happened before. So I'm curious to hear about that. First, what you've seen constantly, and second, what are those things now that are making you go like, whoa, what's this?
For me, one of the big ones is, as the nerd here, it's super hilarious to hear people talking about podcasts and just how it's becoming big now. Because as a nerd, it was always big to us. Like, I was hand posting podcasts before Libsyn. Libsyn started in 2004. I think I made my original Libsyn account in 2005 or 6. And, people now talking about video podcasts. I did my first video podcast in 2008. So it's really weird to hear people talk about it now. But the good news is it's finally catching up, and everybody can be a part of this, right? So it's like one of those things. Like for the longest time, you did something somewhere, then it became a fashion, and your friends was like, "Oh, so the bell bottoms did come back." So it's a little weird to hear it, but I appreciate it because I do understand we were in our own little circle, and we thought it was going to take over the world, and we knew eventually we would be right. We just didn't know it would take 20 years to get right. But it feels like next year will be 20 years, and it seems like it's finally starting to get right. So it's a little weird. But that being said, the trends are people will forever tell you that it's saturated. And from way back in 05, 06, they were telling us podcasts are saturated. Here we are where in Rob's talk back in Movement, he's saying there's over 600 600 million podcasts popping now, but most people never make it past like one episode. So it's never saturated. If you got good content, you could come out of anywhere with something good, and everybody's going to be about that life. So never be worried about that. And I want to go back to something that Gabe touched on that I think people often miss. The NFL are doing games in Mexico. Why? Because they know the market is about that life, right? Same thing with basketball. NBA did some games down in Mexico and South America, things like that. So these guys, they're on it because they know that the Latino dollar is actually worth a lot. And I mean, as a Raiders fan, we've always had the largest Latino, contingency, if you will. So this is out there when you're writing your reports and you're trying to get those people to come into your so you be a sponsor for your show or something like that. Please don't forget to use that info that Gabe's generating for you. Number one, Gabe's brilliant. I spent a lot of time hanging out with him at the event, and I was like, yo, this kid is freaking brilliant. My head was exploding as he's telling me some of these things. And so now I was like, I've never really used that to talk to anyone about, being part of my show. Now I will, because I finally understand it. And thanks to you guys putting together stuff like this, I feel like the voice is harder to ignore when you're spending time collecting the data to back up your voice, right? I've always known this. I've always had it in my heart, but I never really had, here's a piece of paper to show you I know exactly what I'm talking about. So I appreciate that love and that effort that's been put in. But I mean, by all means, people, please don't be afraid. And if you didn't hear it yet, if you haven't started your membership community yet, please do that as soon as possible. You would be surprised. And Gabe now has the paper to prove it. You'll be surprised how many people want to be a part of your membership community and want to be a part of what it is you're doing. I mean, I never in a million years thought I would live in a condo overlooking the ocean in Hawaii, making over 6 figures a year for running my damn mouth when my mom used to tell me, shut up.
Oh my God. All right. Well, Talk Rock, that was a great way to end this. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to bring everybody else back on stage here. We're going to take on some questions. We're running just a tiny little bit behind. And if, y'all panelists, if you need to skedaddle, I do not want to keep you over. I just want to let you know that if you need to go, you need to go. I get it. But we are going to look at some questions that we have here on the chat. We have one from Jennifer who says, who is the main contact do you go to, I assume, after for brand partnerships? Is it marketing department, or do you go in at the diversity level, DEI, etc., or both? Does anybody want to answer that question? I'm not sure if even Tangia, you look like you might have some answers on that one, but I'm not sure.
Sure. So quickly, I think this question was actually asked probably for Zack, because that's when the question came in. I'll just really quickly say, as somebody in PR, most of the time when you're trying to create a brand partnership, you want the marketing dollars because they have way bigger budgets and they have a much clearer sense of the market. DEI dollars are generally for internal programs or for a specific community-based program. and they don't have as much money as the marketing department, and they often don't have as much say over where those dollars are spent. So I'd recommend that you go after somebody in marketing. There are times that DEI dollars might be a good fit, but I would start with marketing. And if it's not marketing and they have a DEI department, they're probably going to tell you like, hey, that's probably a DEI thing, and don't be afraid to ask them either.
Zach, do you have any?
I would agree. Marketing is definitely the marketing directors, their marketing teams. Sometimes some brands have like a special like influencer department of the marketing where that's where, podcasting, Instagram, YouTube, all of that sort of stuff. That area is what they handle, that department. But I also, for me, when it came to working with different brands, I'd liked to build those relationships. So I would go to a lot of events in this specific category. So a lot of the brands that I work with are like lifestyle and wellness brands. So I would go to those types of like expos or events where they would do product samplings or they would have panels like this, because it's just a great way to network. And I think you gain more money. Like some of my best brand deals that I currently have right now are brands that I've worked with or known for many, many years. And because we have that relationship and have built that relationship, they trust me. So when I come and I'm like, hey, throw me some cash, they're like, boom, because they know the money's going to pay off.
Yes, the amount of cold questions I get on a daily basis from people I have no idea who they are is phenomenal. It's almost up there with the spam I get about car warranties. The people who have spent time to make a relationship in our community, just showing up and being present and being part of the conversation. And I would sometimes reach out to them because they didn't know that they had enough clout to be in there. They get better, support from us than people that just call us and say, hey, give me some money. You should do this because I'm cool. I'm like, what? No. But
everybody's cool.
Relationship, we'll sponsor people if they're good. I mean, if I look at your content, I like it, and I feel you are bringing something to the table from a help level. That's my purpose and mission is help. So if I feel like you're helping folks, I'm down. If you're just being you because you're about you, not really my squeeze, I'm not giving you 20 cents.
I think we have another follow-up question too about brands. Jennifer also asked, any success getting with brand via the agencies, influence or marketing partners? I don't know if, I don't exactly know. I'm assuming, I'm not sure about that one.
Yeah, I mean, agencies are great. But I think it's better when you have like that personal connection that you're able to build with brands, show them that you actually use the products. Like me, I will not go into a brand partnership or a deal with a product or service or whatever that I don't fully believe in, or that I don't fully believe will provide value to the audience. Like I always like to think of the consumer, and I always like to think of the person that's going to be listening to the podcast and listening to this ad read, or, receiving the endorsement in some way, be it on social or the pod. And just, making sure that it brings some sort of benefit to their life. So I always like to look at it from that lens. But I think building those relationships is better than working with ad agencies, because ad agencies, not that they're bad, but they also manage multiple different, creators, multiple different podcasts that sometimes you don't always have the opportunity. You'll make more money if you approach it on your own.
Yeah. And I'll also say, just speaking from the agency side of things, because where we're positioned with major brands is as part of the agency set. So we meet a lot of their influencer marketing folks. And as somebody who's worked in agencies before, agencies are much less likely to take a leap. So if you are not already a rock star influencer, they're much less likely to bring you to the brand client. The client themselves, that brand, is going to be more likely to be like, maybe we should just go for this, because they don't have to answer and lose the potential business for looking bad. So direct to brand is always the best bet, in my opinion.
That's very, very smart. We have one other question here that is all about starting a podcast. Holy crap. Let's not get going down that rabbit hole. When you start a podcast, do you just start it on YouTube, or do you do it somewhere else? Oh my God, Doc Rock, I know that you can take this, as can I. So go, sir.
The answer is both. I would suggest you definitely do YouTube, because it is insane to this point in time not to do it on YouTube when there's over 2.5 billion people active on YouTube. At the same time, you should definitely be doing the Libsyn version, because the audio is still king and video is still on the catch up. But the advantage of YouTube is a great discovery platform. And for right now, most people are still absorbing this in their car or on their commute. And then so they're not going to be looking at a screen. I know I absorb a lot of mine on YouTube because I got right there. And these people are talking to me when I'm working in the office. So secretly, so I don't feel like I'm down here by myself. But, that's my friends on the TV back there. So yeah, definitely do both. It is not hard to do both at all. So from my platform, I say record your stuff live so you have those video clips to market on the visual places, but take the audio clips, the audio version, and place that on somewhere like Libsyn where you're going to get that all out. So yeah, and the RSS thing, I just see it popped up, Maribel. It's really close to almost dying if YouTube has their way with it, but they haven't proven that yet. But I think RSS is not as important anymore. But until somebody beats it, it's always going to be top dog. So you're correct for right now.
Yep. And just to follow up, first, Doc Rock has a show. His show is called The Flow. And one of the key things that I really love about it's a podcast about podcasting is that it is doing a podcast video first, which is slightly different than a lot of the other podcasts about podcasting out there. So you can go check it out in the Ecamm Live channel. That's where they do it. They do it there. And then you can also obviously listen to it in your ears. The Libsyn YouTube channel also has all kinds of how to podcast and things like that, all kinds of startup stuff. And my show, The Feed, the official Libsyn podcast, often talks more about analysis and insight and stuff like that, that you can definitely check out. Folks, we are going to start wrapping up a little bit more of this panel. But before we let our panelists go, you're welcome to stay and hang out and do our little networking session because we're going to have some really lovely questions moving forward. But first, I want to tell y'all about Zack Peter. He's doing a live event in November, right? Over at the Bourbon Room. I'm like, I was going to say the Boom Boom Room, but that's not it. The Bourbon Room.
Yes, the Bourbon Room in Los Angeles, November 19th. It's going to be a special Friendsgiving show. So we'll have a lot of surprise special guests in the show, but it'll be fun. November 19th, the Bourbon Room. Tickets available at nofilterlive.com. I love doing the live shows. I started doing them last year, and I think everyone's ready to get out and meet in person. And they're a lot of fun to connect with everybody and drink the wine together.
Yes. And you can definitely connect with Zack over on all the places. Like YouTube is one of the places you'll see him all the time. And of course, his podcast, No Filter. Go check it out. I love to... I hang out with you every night when I'm washing dishes, Zack. So you're my you're my release, for my brain. Michelle, what do you have going on that we can, other than Recordical? It's very hard to say that.
Yeah, Recordical is the big one. We have a digital membership now. That's fantastic. I encourage everyone to join that if you just need guidance on how to be an audio creator and level up your audio creation. So it's not just for podcasters, it's for voice actors, it's for streamers, it's for singers, musicians. We really help coach you through with mini courses how to build your audience and how to just make better audio. So that's where you can find a lot of information that's really relevant to this audience right here. And of course, if you want to listen to some of our work on the frequency side, you can find it on our website.
Right on. Gabe, tell us a little bit one last time about the Latino Podcast Listener Report and where we can find all of that and check out and sign up.
Google the Latino Podcast Listener Report. You can find the 3 previous reports. The 4th annual Latino Podcast Listener Report will come out on October 5th. You can catch that in a live webinar. Elsie, Brianna Mendez from SXM Media, and myself will be hosting that, and we will be putting that together. And one last piece of advice for everyone: please find yourself a hype man like Doc. Thank you very much for the compliments. I really appreciate it. Whenever you are in New York, please come through. We're going to go out together. All right.
Yes, definitely.
Yay! All right. And Doc, where are you not? I'm just kidding.
Traveling a lot, speaking, believe it or not. I'm just here to do my show to try to help creators, talk, because we were told as kids, be quiet, sit down, don't speak unless spoken to. Only, talk if someone asks you a question. And I think that makes so many of us, especially in our community, don't feel they have a voice, but everyone has a story to tell. And I want to get everybody to tell that story, because I swear to you, there's a U-sized hole in somebody's life. And as soon as you pop in, you generate massive community. And my community is like my Tinkerbell juice. When people get on my nerves, I just go in my community and go live, and they start talking to me. I feel good, like within minutes. So yeah, if nothing else, you get your own hype squad. So
oh my God,
man, I really do. I appreciate the work you put in there, because I swear, I think I study a lot. I had no idea until talking to you how much this type of data and stuff could really help us out. So I appreciate it, fam.
Yeah, it's all good. Like, you're making me cry, Doc. You're so sweet. And like, you're just like all heart. And I love to see you because you always give me coffee. Yes. From Hawaii. Yes. Every time. So.
Anytime.
Elsie, are there any final words that you'd like to share before we kind of close things out?
Oh my gosh, no, you guys have been amazing. Thank you so much for spending your evening or afternoon with us. It's been so great. And I think if I were to say just one thing, is to connect with one person today and to follow up with them, to support each other when we're out there, because all of us are always looking for more eyes, for more ears. It doesn't ever hurt to just retweet something or send something out for somebody else. I think one of the biggest pain points we all have is that promotional aspect. And if we can just together come in and be able to share that information, it would be incredible to be able to do that kind of stuff. Also, the Latino Podcast Listener Report, y'all, listen, it's like my baby. It's not really my baby. It's sort of like I adopted it. So like, I know, right, Gabe? And it's like,
it's your baby.
It's my baby. It's my baby
I have to say that you were the first person that I met at a podcast movement that I attended for the first time in 2019. And that's how the conversation got started. I brought this up, but that led me to Martina, who turned out to be one of the first sponsors. But if I had never spoken to you, I don't think the Latino Podcast Listener Report would exist. So,
wow.
Yeah. It's like, it was back, and data really matters, y'all. If we share the report, and I know it doesn't seem like fun and stuff, but this data, use the data, quote the data, tag Edison, share the stuff. That would be incredible. So yeah, data totally matters. Thank you all, and follow the BIPOC podcast creators with everything that they do. This is amazing that they bring people together in this way for us to share and help each other grow.
Thank you so much, Elsie. Thank you to Libsyn. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Zack. Thank you, Doc Rock. Thank you, everyone who came in. Michelle, who already left. Thanks always, Khouri, for supporting us so much with Libsyn. And we will see you again very soon. Our next event is in a couple of weeks. So hopefully you're on our email list. If you're not, please make sure you are. It's you can find it at bipocpodcastcreators.com. And we give you only helpful information. I promise we don't spam you. And we're always letting you know when we're having networking events or in-person events. So we will see you very soon, hopefully again. And until then, good night, everybody.
Thank you, Maribel. Thank you, Tangia. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, Elsie.
Everybody. Bye-bye.